Thank you, everyone, and particularly everyone that has donated their token and given it to Fareshare. We're really, really grateful. It's been quite a wild year for everyone that works for our charity and everyone that volunteers for our charity as well. It's really quite been unprecedented. I've been in the charity sector for about 6 years, and I've never seen anything quite like this. Both in a positive and negative sense. I'll give you a little whistle-stop tour about Fareshare, where we've come from, how we've managed to cope in this year, and hopefully where we want to go. So Fareshare was brought into existence through a combination of the charity crisis and actually Sainsbury's. There was this realization that food poverty and food waste aren't something that should coexist. Why is all this good food going to waste when there are people, for one reason or another, struggling to provide food for themselves and their families? So we kind of grew and grew, and off the back of that, we became our own independent charity in 2004, and things have just moved on and on from that point. The real concept of what we do is incredible. It's a really, really simple idea at its core, and it's not the sexiest work, really, for lack of a better term either. What we do is we get food that would otherwise be wasted to charities all across the UK. And the number, sadly, has kind of fluctuated a bit madly this year because there are a lot of organisations have had to close their doors. But it sits somewhere approximately around the 10,000. That's 10,000 different charities that receive our food. But there's so much more we could be doing. I'm not sure what's been covered in its entirety yet. And I don't know if anyone on this call is, either a football fan or a sports fan or a music fan. But if you've ever been to Wembley Stadium, if you can imagine what that gigantic structure looks like, and if you've never been to Wembley Stadium, hopefully you've got a recycling bin you can see somewhere. So imagine what 8 Wembley Stadiums would look like. Or imagine what the equivalent of 380 million of your standard recycling bins would look like. Up with fresh, good, nutritious, completely fit for human consumption food. That's what the UK is producing every single year. And last year, before COVID, we were in the good fortune of being able to break our own records. The last 2-3 years back to back, we've been able to put out more food than ever before. And last year it was 57.3 million meals. And just to remind you, that is all pretty much surplus food. So without our intervention, it would have been wasted or gone to something like animal feed or anaerobic digestion, which is a process to turn it into energy, which are perfectly fine means if and when there's not a recourse to get it to a human being that is, for one reason or another, struggling. So 57.3 million meals. We don't know exactly how this year is going to pan out because we're still kind of crunching the numbers. We've obviously just finished the financial year, but we are looking to have at least doubled that amount of food out across the UK. So 57.3 million doubled in next to no time at all, which on the one hand, when you work for a charity, you think, wow, it's amazing that we've been able to step up in that way and help people all across the UK that are in need. The other hand is, wow, the need has grown that exponentially in such a short period of time. There's a lot more going on behind the scenes that sadly allows a situation like that to happen. And it's been a totally unprecedented year. But there has been some amazing partnerships that have been forged. British business and beyond have really stepped up in a big way and helped us out. And we've actually gone back on 2 of our main sort of principles as an organisation. We've accepted donated food, and the distinction of donated food is either food that's sort of been purpose made for Fareshare to then redistribute. We've actually bought food. We've got 2 large grants from the government, which again is amazing to know that they trust us to redistribute that amount of food. But that's just how gross the need has been this year, that we've had to go back on our own sort of morals and principles just to keep the food going out. And it's one of those things you don't really know it's a problem if you've never experienced it in your life. I've been lucky enough and fortunate enough in my upbringing to never really have to worry about where food was coming from at all. But there's been some incredible work done by an organization called the Food Foundation, who do a lot of sort of statistical work on the numbers of food insecurity and food poverty across the UK. I believe the number is 12.2% of families with children in the past 6 months alone have experienced food insecurity. 12.2% of the UK's children or families with children have experienced some sort of food insecurity. I'm not quite sure how we got to this point as a nation, and there's a long, long way to go. And just to reiterate the number, 57.3 million meals there. As I said, that was all surplus food, all redistributed food. Of those Wembley stadiums, I don't know if I can sort of pose a question to the chat. I'll have a look at the event notes here. Of those sort of Wembley stadiums or millions of wheelie bins worth of food, how much as a percentage do you think that 57.3 million is? If you had to labour a guess, and there are no wrong answers here. I'll give you a split second there. It's about 7 to 8% of all edible surplus in the UK. Fareshare as a charity is getting to right now, and just think that's not even 10%, and that was 57.3 million meals. It seems like a fantasy to think, wow, how are we ever going to get that to 100%? France as a nation are redistributing 90 to 95% of their surplus. There are other charities in the UK picking up another 1 to 2%, but really it's about the 10% mark as a nation. That's what we're doing right now. And there's a really, really long way to go. And it seems like a colossal, huge problem. And how do we possibly wrestle that back? If you think the food pyramid, when things end up at a restaurant, on a restaurant table, we can all actually find those sort of things now. Go out to a restaurant, or when you are shopping around your supermarket, it doesn't just appear there. There's so many steps that food has to go through, whether that's packaging or manufacturing or whatever, but it all comes from the farmer's field or a fishery. It's essentially one of those two places. So that is where the maximum level of edible surplus is, at the farmer's level. But unfortunately, a lot of farmers, and particularly in this country, have such tight margins. It's not always necessarily that possible to get more of that food. And the way farming works is, you have to sow more than you reap. So there's always going to be a certain level of waste. But if I'm speaking totally personally here and not necessarily on Fareshare's behalf, but sadly, I think we are all part of the problem. And I'll give you a personal anecdote here, just to show you I'm not pointing the finger. I'm pointing at myself as well. I used to shop exclusively at Lidl because that's what my salary allowed me to do, and it was convenient. It was the shop that was kind of on the way home. And I got really, really annoyed. I don't know if anyone else shops at Lidl, but sometimes they just don't have any stock. It just feels like locusts come in and everything disappears. Yeah, we've all kind of experienced that in the past year or two, but it felt like it was fairly regularly, and I was just getting really, really annoyed. I couldn't get what I wanted at the particular point in time. And then I swapped. I went to a different supermarket. I thought, you know what, I've had enough of this. But that's part of the problem. Food is seasonal, and if we want to eat more environmentally consciously, we need to try and eat locally as and where we can as well. And you can't always get what you want every single day of the year. That's just not how food works. And if we ever want to seriously combat climate change and the gross amount of CO2 that's produced, if food waste alone were a country in terms of CO2 emissions, it would be number 8 out of all the countries in the world. And if food production, that's the whole kind of process, were a country, it would be number 3 behind the sadly 2 usual suspects. 1/3 of food grown globally is wasted, and we can't look and point the finger. Unfortunately, us in Britain, we are bad offenders for this as well. And the only thing that is really going to influence decisions is where you shop, how you shop. You know, wonky veg is a new thing. It simply didn't exist 10 years ago, or at least not I saw. The power of the pound is really powerful in shaping decisions. And if that's the way we need to be moving. The climate crisis is real, and there is so much good edible food that's out there while people are struggling to provide for themselves. So, you know, what we do is no long-term silver bullet answer to food insecurity. There's systemic issues that really, really need to be looked at. But while there is that amount of edible surplus out there, you know, we really think that it should be going to vulnerable people. So I'll end on a more positive note there. I think that what's been donated to Fareshare is essentially what it would cost us to redistribute over 1,000 meals to vulnerable families and individuals across the UK. So please, thank you for thinking of us as the organisation for this particular month. But do look into our work, and please connect with me on LinkedIn and ask any questions you like.